Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, live on CBS Sports Network. One of the things we like to do, both here on this show and on the Cover 3 podcast, which you can download wherever you get your podcast, is to not just give you picks like we do in our Locks episode on Thursday, but to really take you inside the matchup, the X factors, the storylines, the places where the game will be decided. And one of the biggest games of the whole non conference schedule in the whole country is Texas, now an SEC member, coming off of its college football playoff appearance, going to play Michigan, the reigning national champions. Danny, why don't you get us started? When you start to break this matchup down, where do your eyes go in terms of some of your biggest questions or the things you think are the most important?
The most important position of the game. It's QB. And there
Mm.
is a significant edge to the Texas Longhorns, clearly with, Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, if you want to throw him in there too, in case anything would happen there at the quarterback position. But I am a believer in the old cliche, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And I know that Davis Warren was a great story and he lit him up in the spring, but I don't like how they're trying to figure out which ones are coming, and they have this package that's probably a little bit too big for Alex Orji. When I say too big, they're utilizing him too much, where it's really hard for Davis Warren to get any sort of the rhythm going when you're having to shuttle out is so frequently for Alex Orji to come in. They've got to figure this thing out in a hurry. Neither one had a real good feel for the receivers. It was Colston Loveland, who is one of the better tight ends out there, as the favorite target, the leading receiver, but they've got to figure out the quarterback, find one guy. If it is Davis Warren, give him a chance. I get maybe a goal line package for Alex Orji. We did see him score in that game, but out in the field, third downs, whatever critical situations are out there, I think they've got to find one and stick with them and figure out their identity of what they want to be.
Danny, you mentioned the quarterback. Obviously, it's very important. I'm very curious, how does Michigan cover the Texas wide receivers? Texas has a rebuilt receiver room this year. It's a lot smaller. It's a lot quicker than it was last year. Michigan still has Will Johnson. They still have some nice pieces in the secondary, but they also have a lot of turnover in that secondary. If it's me, I'm not trying to run the ball at Michigan. Michigan's front seven is still dynamite. I'm going to try to spread Michigan out as much as possible and make sure that new corner, make sure that new safety, make sure that new nickel is actually up to the challenge of covering all of that Texas speed. And then it'll be on Quinn Ewers. Can he make those decisions? Can he find the open man? Michigan has a lot of really intricate pressure packages. It's not going to be easy, but Michigan's corners have got to be able to hold up against all that Texas speed.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be decided in the lines of scrimmage. We talked about it on the show last week. I agree. Michigan's quarterback situation against Fresno State was a mess. Like, it was not pretty. There was not a lot to sit there to watch and be like, oh, I feel good about that. But to me, the bigger concern was how terrible Michigan's offensive line looked against a Fresno State team that, granted, might have one of the better defensive lines in the Mountain West, but it's still a Mountain West team, and you're still much bigger than they are. So the fact Michigan really wasn't able to get any kind of push, particularly early from its offensive line, either in the run game or to protect in the passing game, is a huge concern. And now comes Texas, who is a little bit better than Fresno State defensively. Like, they lose Byron Murphy and Montez Sweat from the middle of that defense from last season, but they have guys coming in to replace them. It's more of a rotation, at least based on what we saw last week in the Colorado State game. But the problem was, I went and watched the Texas game against Colorado State. They didn't show you anything. Like, they didn't have to do anything. They were pretty much just sitting there rushing four guys every single time. There was very low pressure rate. They didn't record a single sack. I didn't know that they were actually trying to record a single sack because the Colorado State offense wasn't be able to do anything anyway. So how will this Michigan offensive line handle this Texas front? Will they be able to open run lanes for the running game? Because this is still Michigan. You know they're going to try to run the ball. It's what they want to do. It's what they've always tried to do. And if they are able to run the ball, then whether it's Davis Warren or Alex Orji, life will become easier for either one of them. On the other side of the ball, you mentioned it, Bud, Texas probably won't be able to run the ball against Michigan. We saw in the Colorado State game, they struggled running the ball against the Rams. They've suffered injuries at the running back spot already coming into the season. And Michigan last week against Fresno State allowed an average of negative 0.16 yards before contact in the run game. They were touching guys in the backfield on average every single snap. Where they looked a little susceptible was through the air. So that is going to be a very interesting situation here because you have Quinn Ewers, you have these Texas receivers. And we saw Michigan, as we kind of suspected all offseason, when Wink Martindale takes over your defense, you're going to blitz a lot. Michigan blitzed nearly 40% of the time against Fresno State. What are they going to try to do against Quinn Ewers in this Texas offense, which is one of the few teams in the country I look at on the offensive line and say, they've actually got a chance of blocking Michigan up front. So I do think that that is where the game is going to be decided on both sides for both teams.
All right, Tom, what about that coaching matchup? Because, Sharon Moore, he's there on the sideline. The offense isn't getting going. The cameras are just going to love it because he's the new Michigan coach and he's taking over for Jim Harbaugh and they're the reigning champions. It feels like he is going to get a lot of the attention here, but that head coach over there, Steve Sarkisian, he can coach some ball too. So you mentioned the changes that we have. Wink Martindale, new defensive coordinator at Michigan. Texas has a defensive staff that lost Jeff Choate, who's now the head coach at Nevada. When you look at the coaching matchup and sort of the way that they're going to have to pass the chalk here, a game that's got about a touchdown spread, over under right around 45. This is a daggum NFL game on our hands. How do you think the coaching matchup is it going to end up playing out on Saturday?
I give the edge to Texas here. I think, this whole show, we've long argued Steve Sarkisian is one of the better play callers in the country. He's one of the better offensive minds. And you look at what he has to work with. Like, yes, Wink Martindale is an excellent defensive coach. He's had plenty of success in the NFL. His coordinators or his, underlings are the guys that Michigan hired to run their defense the last few years. They're who they learned that defense from. But unlike what, Sharon Moore has on offense, Sark has experience at quarterback. There's nothing Quinn Ewers hasn't seen yet at the college level. So if they know Michigan's going to be ultra aggressive and blitzing a lot, they're going to have a set of plays ready to take advantage of that. And Michigan's going to have to adjust. And we're going to have to see, I think Will Johnson can take away whoever they feel like the best player on that Texas offense is. So you have to find other ways to get them the ball and just try to stay away from Will Johnson, which is typically a good game plan every single week. But I do still think that they're going to have to try to run the ball. So maybe we'll see some screens to kind of slow down that Michigan aggressiveness, and that'll allow them to run the ball more in the second half.
Now, if you want to come get Bud Elliott's lock or pick on this game, come hang out 11 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday for the Cover 3 Locks episode. But as we sit here live on CBS Sports Network on Tuesday, Bud, what's the handicap looking like? Total, team total, first quarter, fourth quarter, the spread straight up? What do you think is a spot that you're starting to look at in terms of the way that this game might play out from a picks perspective?
Sure. So I on numbers, I should bet Michigan, but on matchups, I'm not going to. Right. I think if you just take pure power ratings, you're giving Michigan like normal home field advantage is 2. You're probably giving Michigan like 3.5 here. They're going to be jacked up. They're going to probably be very grabby, very physical, try to drag Texas down to the muck. But like when I look on my sheet where I want to bet Michigan or where I want to fade Michigan, right? It says teams who can block Michigan, bet against Michigan. Teams who can spread Michigan out, bet against Michigan. Everybody else, bet on Michigan. So to me, Texas would kind of check those boxes, but yet I think the number, it's already baked in. I'm not laying over a touchdown here in the big house. So I will have a lot of locks on our locks podcast on Thursday. This probably won't be one of them.
That's why what you're talking about, I do think there's an overreaction to what we see. It's totally normal. It's human to see what you saw based off of one game and say, I'm getting off this team, or to see a line move as much as it has in this game. I kind of like Michigan at home. Chips had one of those matchups, Wink Martindale against Steve Sarkisian. Can he confuse Quinn Ewers? They did get 2 picks against Mikey Keene. Clearly, different level of quarterbacks, one of the best in the country. But I also wonder if they were holding back some schemes somewhat, some blitzes, some looks that could be frustrating for that high-flying Texas offense. Clearly, Michigan wants to slow the game down, so I'd probably lean the under in this one. But I kind of like Michigan over a touchdown at home. We'll have to see, like you said, cover 3 if we lock it up or not.
Yeah, I guarantee you, Wink Martindale has how people have cookbooks of 1,000 different recipes. Wink Martindale's got 1,000 different blitzes he could throw at you from any single time, and he loves to do it. I don't know, as far as the spread in this game. Bud mentioned it. Like I think a lot of that stuff is baked in. It is very difficult for me to look at Michigan as a touchdown underdog at home and not want to take that, but I'm probably going to stay away from it. Honestly, what I like more than anything in this game is the under, because I really don't have a ton of faith in this Michigan offense right now, and I have a lot of faith in the Michigan defense to, at a minimum, minimize damage that Texas will be able to do to them and keep this one low scoring. So if I'm taking anything right now, it's the under.
Again, come hang out 11 a.m. Eastern. Oh, you want me? Quinn Ewers won in Tuscaloosa. What are we doing here? He can win anywhere, but you'll have to come and hang out 11 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday.